What's up everybody and welcome to Team Pizza's E3 2015 recap. The biggest event in the gaming industry has just ended and I think it's a time to look over basically everything that went on during these past couple days and basically do not just an overview but also give my opinions on every single thing that happened because number one, I believe this was a very good year. There was a lot of things to discuss, and I also believe that despite the fact that it seems like everyone else on the planet is doing this kind of thing right now, I believe that on something on this scale, it's worth having more opinions in there. It's worth putting them out there and letting people get a bigger idea of what's going on and how people are feeling about all these kinds of things. So, without further ado, let's hop right into it and start off with the Bethesda conference. First things first, we finally got our first major reveal for Doom 4. We got gameplay of both the single player, the multiplayer, and the new feature called Snap Map, which basically lets you not only build your own levels and layouts for levels, but also change the in-game logic, like how objects would interact with one another, what they do in terms of the game's code. So it lets you build your whole new games, whole new modes, all kinds of cool things, which I'm all for. Like, you know I'm a creative soul at heart, so that kind of thing is right up my alley. But Doom 4 in general, the thing is, I'm not usually really big on first-person shooters is the thing, and we're gonna get more into that as we get into some of the other conferences and some of the other game reveals. But Doom in particular has a personality to it. It started in the era where I started to first get into video games, and it has a lot of the mentalities of the games of those times that I was really attracted to. It's got a whole lot of character, a whole lot of definition, and I'm seeing a lot of that here. Like, in that trailer when he picked up the super shotgun, and I realized this is, because I never played the original game. Well, not to any great extent anyway, but when I realized this is a weapon that fires 2 shells at once, just insta-kills anything you point it at within a short to mid-range, I remember audibly saying, "Oh, I want it." Just boom, boom, boom! Game looks like a blast to play. No pun intended, of course. One thing I hear a lot of people talking about is the chainsaw in particular. And I'm of the same mind where it's weird too, like seeing those animations take place over and over and over again where you just wait 2 seconds for the enemy to get sliced in half, but bear in mind, it took about that long to kill any kind of demon with the chainsaw in the original game too. It's just, you kind of stood there holding the button. It was the same canned animation, it's just they were also kind of standing against you, pressed up against the butt of your weapon, I guess in this case, and just clawing at your face the whole time. I guess they fixed that at least. It makes sense, it just doesn't feel like it makes sense to the gamer, so they were kind of caught in a bit of a weird design decision with that one. The multiplayer, it looks okay. You kind of get to play as one of the demons, the Reaver, I believe that one is called, or it started with an R. I'll put it down at the bottom of the screen here once I figure it out, but one other thing I want to say about Doom though, I've also heard a lot of people giving the argument that they wish the game had more color. It had more of those popping visuals, those very colorful, those very... the original Doom had an aesthetic. It had a very defined look to it, where everything did not try to go for this photorealistic look where everything kind of washed out and blended into each other, and I am a little disappointed in that. It does make the game less interesting to look at, but I really don't think it's going to make it any less fun to play. Not by enough of a margin where I'd be willing to pass this up. And again, for reasons I'll explain later, I'm definitely going to be picking up a PS4 here in a little bit, so I'm definitely going to be checking that one when it comes out. I also want to point out, this came alongside the announcement of Bethesda.net, which I don't see a lot of people talking about, which I think is kind of concerning because the last time anybody tried something like this, it was called EA Origin. And we all know how that one turned out. Next up on the docket was Battlecry, and you know, I don't have anything against this game per se, I think they got it right the first time when it was called Team Fortress 2. Again, I'm not really a big fan of these sort of arena team deathmatch style games where the only goal is to just tear the other guy to shreds with the various abilities that your particular class has. It seems to have it's got a good aesthetic. It seems to not be taking itself too seriously, which I like. It has a personality. I just don't think I can bring myself to play it. I don't see anything that's immediately jumping out at me. So, again, if you like this kind of thing, you're probably really going to like this, but I'm still on the fence. I haven't seen anything that's gonna make me just that didn't even make me pounce on that beta that they offered for signing up right after the show was over, so what can you do? Now on the opposite end of that spectrum, we have Dishonored 2. And this game is really interesting because I have not played the original Dishonored yet. It's in the queue. It's one of those things I've always been meaning to get to, but I never had the time to get around to. And the thing about that game is, I've heard so many people praise it so much. The idea that it finally gets this concept right of being able to approach levels however you like. Like, if you want to go in guns blazing, you're going to have a hard time of it, but you can definitely do that. If you want to take the stealthy route and just hop around in the shadows and do all these things to make it look like the deaths were an accident, you can do that. Or you could just do a combination of both and come up with your own plan as events unfold. And they're all viable strategies. It sort of eliminates that fear of failure I usually have in stealth-based assassination games where I'm constantly on that razor's edge. I'm constantly feeling the hairs on the back of my neck going up, that incredible pressure to make sure every movement I make is perfect because I'm afraid of making a mistake and watching just everything I've worked for up to that point fall apart. So I've been meaning to get around to that, and apparently I hear the DLC is really, really good too. Because now the sequel has come out, so it seems all of that fanfare that people give it was now, in a way, justified. And they're seeming to expand on this game a whole lot. They're giving you a female playable character, which I've heard some interesting tidbits about this. I've heard if you choose her as your playable character, the guy will be dead. If you choose the guy as the playable character, I forget his name off the top of my head, the woman will be dead. I forget her name as well. Shows you how much I care about this idea, right? But no, seriously, I really want to play this now because that was one of the criticisms lodged against the original. Maybe not criticisms, but a pining wish by people, is they set up this world, they set up this scenario with Dishonored, this setting that people wanted to see so much more of because you got such a limited view of it. And now we have the chance. Now we have the ability to see this incredible place that they set up in the original game. And you know what? I'm feeling that. I'm really feeling like it's time for me. It gets me excited to go back and finally get to the original. So I guess this is one of those sequels that's really done its job in that sense. So Elder Scrolls Online has gotten its first major content update. Its first really big expansion where it's introducing a lot of new areas, some new features. Apparently there's a lot more player-driven story. No, I'm thinking of something else. That was Star Wars The Old Republic. Well, obviously there's a new story. And I'm happy for the people who are playing this game. I'm really happy that they're continuing, despite a lot of the criticism that was lodged against this game, they're continuing to support it and they're continuing to build upon it instead of just canceling it outright. But the problem of where I stand with this is I started way back in the day of... You gotta understand, I played RuneScape back when it first came out. And for being technical about this, my first MMO was called Neopets. This ain't my first rodeo. It's become increasingly difficult to get me into anything that isn't free to play. And I realize there's no subscription, but no, you do have to pay in some capacity to play this game, to own it in the first place. So no, it is not free to play. I need to establish that. A lot of people have a misconception about that concept. And I mean, like I said, it's gonna take a lot of work to get me off my current path, which is power leveling a Reaper in Terra. And I gotta say, considering I just bought a maid costume for that character, it's gonna take an astronomical effort to move me to something else. But beyond that, if we're being serious for a moment, maybe it's because I didn't grow up with Elder Scrolls. Like, I like Skyrim, and I appreciate the hell out of Oblivion. Like, when I played that for the first time, I was kind of overwhelmed by how open it was, how you could just go anywhere, do anything. It's not that I don't have fond memories of the series, it's just not as important to me. It's not something that would make me drop everything to go play this right now. So again, take that with a grain of salt, considering my position. If you like this kind of thing, good for you. I'm glad you're excited for it. But for me, it's I could do without. Speaking of Elder Scrolls, we have the announcement of Elder Scrolls Hearthfire Elder Scrolls Legends. Yeah, that's the nickname this series has gotten. Sorry, not this series. This game has gotten lately. You notice that nobody who's announced a trading card game or a digital collectible card game for their series is actually showing you how the game plays. And I think that's mostly because they're afraid that everyone will compare it to Hearthstone. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, in a situation like that, games like this, it's why titles like Game of War and Clash of Clans their trailers and their commercials always show these, either they go with a CGI trailer or they go with some kind of high fantasy thing with women bathing in a bathtub. They know their market, at least, I'll say that much. But they never show the direct game because maybe developers, I think it might be a pressure thing, like maybe they're kind of embarrassed to show off the game and what may very well seem like a bit of a primitive state to people out there. It's not quite what they're used to producing, is what I mean. There might be an element of shame to it, or unmarketability to it at the very least, how people will look at something like that and they'll say, what is this? This looks like really cheap and underproduced, no matter how much time, effort, and heart actually went into bringing this mythos into the game, bringing these characters together and creating these really fun and engaging systems that actually make it a damn good card game, which Hearthstone really is. So I'm sure Elder Scrolls Legends will be a good game. It's just they've got a bit of an uphill battle to convince the rest of the world of that. I'll definitely play it when it comes out because chances are this is going to be free to play with the booster pack system in place, but again, I'll reserve judgment for when I actually get to play it. And that brings us to our big one. Oh, the biggest one. And part of why I think a lot of people are saying that Bethesda actually won E3 this year. And it's the one everybody was expecting because they released a trailer, I think it was 2 weeks before E3 even happened. So everyone thought, well, what are they going to show off at the show? Apparently quite a bit. Number one, they spoiled the art book by showing off that trailer of all the different concept artwork and all of the different ideas that they pulled from to make this game come together. But then they actually had the reveal. And it's kind of interesting. These guys care so much about setting up this world, about not spoiling the stories that you have into it. And I was kind of alluding to this earlier, but I have a theory about how you should make stories, about how you should handle sequels. It's not really about creating a singular character that has a story that can continue. It's about creating a world so interesting that it could house multiple characters who could all have their own interesting tales, go out into the world and create these fantastic adventures. And that's what's so great about the Fallout universe, is there are so many vaults scattered about America that they could pick up with just about anyone and take it in any direction they like. And we're seeing that here. Fallout 4, from what we're seeing now, is a fantastic game. And this is something I have to give Bethesda incredible credit for. With some very few exceptions, we saw a ton of gameplay in this conference, and Fallout was one of the biggest examples of this. They basically spilled their guts about this game. Not only did they come out and straight up confirm that it is coming out this year, not only did they tell us about the building system, like creating your own bases, your own towns, supplying them with power, creating a tower defense type thing where you're keeping raiders from coming in and attacking everybody there, ransacking all of your hard work and destroying it. And the fact that all of that is optional, like you never even have to toy with that, which... that's kind of a misnomer when devs say that. Like, they say you can do it. Like, they'll give you the option because that's just good game design, is to give your player that kind of freedom, but you can usually tell in their voice, they're like, yeah, you can shoot that guy in the face if you want to. And what they're fighting themselves to keep from saying deep down is, please don't do that though. He's got a bunch of really interesting dialogue that we spent weeks, if not months, putting together. But all things considered, the crafting system, holy cow, all those different things. You can command the dog to wherever you want to go. This game offers you so much freedom. The male characters can actually cross-dress now. That's... my goodness, they just put their hearts and souls into this. And I gotta give a big shout out to Todd Howard, the guy who was hosting all of this. Out of all the people I saw at E3 this year, aside from maybe the guy who showed off Unraveled, he seemed like the most human. He was the most believable human being on any of the stages I saw, because not only was he convincing, he actually felt like he was believed in what he was saying. I am committing that guy's name to memory because he seems like a really cool dude. He seems like one of those developers who legitimately cares about what he's doing, despite the fact that he's now entered what is increasingly become this nebulous area that is the AAA market, even though some games are released in such a buggy and broken state that they can't really be considered in that category anymore. But I digress. That's more Ubisoft's territory these days. I loved that moment where he was talking about the companion app for the game, and he says, and companion apps are usually, we don't like them because they're just stupid little gimmicks. But out of all the stupid gimmicks we've ever seen, this one is pretty cool. Oh, that was such a good, self-aware moment. I love people who understand it, who get that, yeah, we're kind of following a trend here, but we did everything we could to make it not lame for you guys. And of course they announced, one of my favorite parts about this whole thing is that they did announce Fallout Shelter, which I'm actually playing on my sister's iPad right now, which it's not a bad game, actually. It is an idle game of sorts, but it's got a lot of cool things to it. And that's another thing I want to talk about how smart this conference was. It's like, yeah, Fallout 4 is coming out in a little bit, but here's a game you can play while you wait for the game to come out. Genius! You guys are so smart! I love it! In Fallout Shelter, because we get to play it now, I can actually talk about it. It does a lot of things you don't usually see in the mobile market. Like, your dwellers can actually die. Like, some of the things you do in this game can lead to their demise. You need to keep an eye on them sometimes. There's this weight. Like, usually failure in a game like this would result in you losing energy or having to pay the freemium currency to try again. There's none of that. Like, it comes from a place that feels more rooted in traditional game design. The idea that the consequences are in-game. They make you feel like you've lost something. They make you feel like there's something at stake here. There's something that you have to protect, that you have to work for. And I really respect Bethesda for doing something like that, because it seems, even when they're working on something small, they still have a respect for it. They still know how to turn it into something that I strive for myself in the game I'm working in right now, and all games I will make in the future is, well, Todd Howard said it himself, it's something they would like to play. They make the types of games they, as gamers, not just think as people who make things for other people, they would like to play. And that is a stance I can respect the hell out of. That's the entire opinion I got from the Bethesda conference this year, and it's why it was one of my personal favorite shows out of the 5 conferences we're going to cover in this video.